So I want to thank you for joining our Horizon League Mental Health Series panel on student athlete identity outside of sport. I'm Jessica Kumke. I'm the Associate Commissioner for the Horizon League. Before we get to our questions from our student athletes today, let's first meet our panelists. So Carly, I'll have you go first.
Hi, I'm Dr. Carly Wahl, and I'm an assistant professor of exercise science at Eastern Illinois University. I earned my PhD in health science with specialization in sport and performance psychology. So, bringing together athlete wellness and mental health is really a passion of mine, and what I earned my PhD in.
Awesome. Thanks, Carly. Randy, you're next.
Hi, I'm Dr. Randy Cutler. I'm a clinical psychologist at Northern Kentucky University in their health counseling and student wellness department. I'm a former college athlete and have a very strong interest in mental skills training, especially in the area of sports performance enhancement.
Great. Thank you, Randy. And last but not least, Kara.
Hi, I'm Kara. I'm a senior softball player at the University of Detroit Mercy. I actually just came from practice, so I'm glad to be here with you guys today. I'll be graduating soon, and I've always just thought it was really important to recognize as an athlete that you are an individual outside of your sport, which I think helps you play and helps you perform. So I thought this was really important to join you guys today.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to our student athletes on this topic that they requested, that the SAC group actually asked us for. So jumping right in, our first question, what are some of the best ways that student athletes can really learn more about themselves outside of their sport activities? And Carly, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think explore, be willing to try new experiences, find activities that are advertised on campus or maybe in the dorms that you're interested in trying. Just pique your interest. Maybe it looks like sitting in on student organizations or something as simple as signing up for an academic class on a topic that you know nothing about or maybe very little, but again, piques your interest. You might be surprised by what you find when you're willing to put yourself out there, and by that, you'll learn as well.
Right. Randy or Kara, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's Carly's right on there. And I would also include, especially as you're winding up or leaving sport, is to take the time to find out and identify clearly what makes life purposeful or meaningful for you. There's things you can do like journaling, reflecting on your day, identifying things that are important to you in that process. Meditation is a wonderful way, and I think going with what Carly's saying, a lot of it to me is just about staying mindful and being self-aware, and not just falling into autopilot. But checking in with yourself regularly.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Next question is kind of related. So are there any specific activities, hobbies that you would recommend for student athletes or something? Kara, I'm going to start this one with you. Is there anything that you like to do that you think would be of interest to other student athletes?
So there are actually two things that I do. I have it right here, actually, which is funny. I keep this, Randy had mentioned it. I keep a journal every day, but softball journal actually, because what I do is when I'm done with my sport, I write down exactly for the day what I could have worked on that day, what I need to work on the next day. So that way it stays on the page and out of my mind for the rest of the day. So that way, instead of it being daunting on me the entire day, I put it there and I can revisit it tomorrow. So I found that really helped me. So I could find be where my feet are at. When I'm in the notebook, I'm at softball. When I'm outside of the notebook, I'm in my regular everyday life. And I just they had mentioned before, I found, because even my career is going to be in sports one day. So I found I needed to do something separate from sports. So I ended up picking up hobbies like poetry, video production, things that made me just outside of my sport as well. So
Carly or Randy, anything to add?
I'll back on with Kara about nurturing other areas outside of sports, other talents, especially those that you might not have had much time to give
Mhm.
to while you've been participating in sports. Music, arts, intellectual, spiritual, creativity, anything like that to give more time to that. And going back to what Carly was saying on the first question, pursuing involvement in new challenges, even physical challenges, picking up a new sport.
Yeah.
Could be an activity to do as your sports career is winding up or after it's over. And then I always go back to the mindfulness things such as journaling, like Kara does, but maybe journaling outside of sport, and meditation, daily gratitude, identifying something you're grateful for every day, and then cultivating new and old parts of your social network to keep that nurtured.
Awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like to think I loved this question, first of all, but definitely I look at this question in a holistic way. What is something physical, mental, social outside of sport that you like to, or your sport that you would like to get back into or connect with? Maybe it looks like grabbing coffee with someone who isn't a teammate or a roommate, that social aspect, the spirituality, all of it. So I think there's so many great ideas and anything that can get an athlete to just disconnect from the sport.
Awesome. All right. So then once they have some of these activities, we know they have busy lives, student athletes between sports and the academics, and then, having this life outside of sport. How do student athletes kind of keep that healthy balance between sport and all the other aspects of their lives? Randy, do you want to start this one?
Sure. To me, it's to make intentional decisions and intentionally assess and rank more the priorities in other areas of one's life. Spiritual, career, social, family, intellectual, physical, economic, even. To start there, then identify the actions that will nurture the areas that are priorities to you. And then, one of the things that's, Kara can probably speak to this, one of the things that's often lost when you're ending your career is the structure that your life has. And the routines. So to develop new structures, new routines that incorporate and nurture and give the attention to those areas that are important to you outside of sport. It's like developing a game plan, really. But now it's about taking care of myself and nurturing myself as I move on from my sport.
So yeah, Carly or Kara, anything to add?
I have something. Like Randy had said, you definitely fall into a pattern every day. I know exactly what practice time is that day. When I have to get up for weights, I have it all laid out all the time. So you can actually have a calendar next to me. I used to keep a calendar and a planner with me, and it's great if that's what works for you. And I still keep little things on here so my roommate can see where I'm at. But now what I do instead is I keep a Google Calendar. So it's always on my phone with me. And what I do is, even because you might think, you always say, if you have time, if it's important, you're going to make time for it. And that's true. But sometimes you got to specifically be cognizant of it and set it aside ahead of time. So I actually go on my Google Calendar. I put everything I have to be at for the day. And if, let's say, I want to journal that day, or I want to go like get in some prayers or something, I actually put it in my day in the Google Calendar so I can see it, and it kind of lines me up for it. That way I don't have the excuse to, I'll get to it later. I already scheduled it into my day. So that's what helps me. Everyone organizes things differently, but that just helps me make sure I even put in drinking water in my meals to make sure I'm really breaking it down, because that's important for your athletic performance as well. So
Great.
Yeah, I 100%, I don't need to spend too much time on it. I 100% agree. When I look at this question, I see program me time into your calendar, literally. So 100%, Kara, of like actually put it into your calendar. Athletes often love the structure and they're used to structure and routine. So if you wouldn't miss that practice or that meeting with the boss or something like that on your calendar, think about that me time, as you wouldn't miss it if it was a meeting with your boss. So don't miss that coffee with a friend. Don't miss the prayer time or the journaling or something like that.
Mm. Exactly. We've been doing schedules since we were like 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So keep doing it.
Preach.
Can I add one more thing to what you're saying?
Sure.
Because Carrie, you mentioned it, sometimes you have good intentions, but we don't always follow through. And so even sometimes it could be useful to have a way to hold yourself accountable. And that could even be having a good friend or a family member that you could say, hey, can you help me, keep my attention on these other areas of my life that are important to me and help me stay accountable to them.
Yeah, it's great. It's the workout buddy for me, that's the one that I need. So yes. So we know our student athletes obviously are very accomplished in their sports and usually have a lot of confidence in that area. How can they kind of have that confidence or increase their confidence outside of their sport in those other areas where maybe that's not their strongest suit or their forte? Kara, or Carly, sorry, you want to take that one for start?
Yeah. I think much of what makes an athlete confident in sport can also easily be translated out of sport as well. For example, staying calm under pressure by taking a few deep breaths, acting confidently through tall, strong body language, talking positively to oneself. I think all of those things can be translated into an out of sport activity where someone doesn't feel as competent or as confident. Just like when they were learning their sport at first, they practiced and they used these strategies. So translate that out of sport as well.
Yeah. Let's see. Randy or Kara, anything to add?
List your strengths as a person, list them out, put them where you can see them regularly. Again, to remind yourself of the value that you have as a human being and so forth. So that's something that I think could be useful. And, a lot of and Carrie, you can let me know if you agree with this. You are a high achiever, and a lot of high achievers can be a little hard on themselves sometimes. Have that little drill sergeant sitting on the shoulder. And to monitor, they're well intended. They're meant to, usually keep us on track and so forth. But then they can sort of get into areas where they don't necessarily do as good a job. And there's these unpleasant side effects like beating on our self-esteem, in areas outside of sport. And so to be mindful of that way that we can tend to relate to ourselves. And to give ourselves some grace in areas that might not come as easily to us.
Mm-hmm. I'm really big with Randy on that. He's right, because we're really hard on ourselves. I know a couple of years ago, so my sophomore year, I was having a really hard time. It was the first season we had actually got canceled again, but we had started to have because of COVID, which made it more difficult. So what I started doing, I have them right here, is I have chalk markers. I'm big into affirmations. I don't know if you can see my door back there. There's a whiteboard on my door. When I'm struggling with certain aspects, my roommates always laugh because they see it. I'll write, "You're a great softball player." And I'm going to say it every day before I leave the door. I know it sounds corny and you might not believe me, but it's true. Or I would just write different things like, softball does not define your entire life. I'm not going to be 80 and wondering, do you know what I mean? I had to write affirmations and I had to say them to myself all the time because I found myself drowning thinking if somebody said, "Ooh, Kara, what are you?" I'd say, "Oh, I'm a softball player." So if softball struggled, I didn't really know what I was doing or what the point was. So I had to give myself other reasons to physically look at to remind myself, or else they kind of slip away from us,
That's great.
Thanks.
All right. Last question. All good things come to an end, we're told. So obviously our student athletes at some point are going to be retiring from their sport. Some point that's going to sort of not be as big a part of their lives anymore. What are some ways student athletes can deal with that, coping mechanisms, those types of things? Randy, any thoughts?
Sure. There's a lot of different aspects of loss, I think, within the athletic experience. I mean, even immediate feedback on your performance. A lot of areas in our life outside of sports, the feedback doesn't come as quickly. Attention, the social support structure, like Carly was referencing the structure before, that can go by the wayside. So, my overarching probably recommendation is patience, compassion, and understanding for yourselves. I'm going to repeat that: patience, understanding, and compassion. Because, like Kara said, there's, you have that side, the devil, and not the devil. That's not accurate because it's well intended. But the judge and the drill sergeant can tend to sit on the shoulders. But to offer yourself that as you're going through this transition period. And the other thing I think as a perspective taking about moving on from sport is to kind of be open and accepting of your emotional experience. I think part of one of the downsides of being a high achieving athlete is that there can be the perception that you've had it good and that you're tough and you have it together. That's kind of the common stereotype. And so there can be a tendency when things are difficult to hold it in, feel like you got to handle it yourself. And then the critic and the judge can get going and beat ourselves up. So to be open and accepting of your emotion, kind of lean into the loss of the sport, to lean into it, to find a way to embrace the grief, sadness, anger, whatever you experience. So those are that's kind of the perspective taking part. And then, there's some things you can do, more nuts and boltsy type of thing. Again, developing the structures that you lose from sport, developing your own structures and routines that help you nurture yourself, take care of yourself, keep up your social networks, further develop them, stay involved in sport, coaching, announcing, refereeing, whatever it might be, stay involved. And then to be mindful again. I always want to emphasize that. Be mindful, assess what's important to you, what kind of person you want to be, and what your priorities are. So those are some of the things that come to mind.
Yeah, great. I'd say, Carly, anything from
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, we have this theme going of structure and planning and writing things on the calendar. And rather than a day to day or month to month, I look at retirement as a 4, 5, 6 year plan of starting the conversation early of what does my life look like outside of sport. So just like Kara identifies, I am a softball player, but I'm also something more than just softball. And I think starting the conversation as early as possible, makes that transition not as unbearable, because we see and we can visualize a career path outside of sport that goes along the lines with having multiple identities, getting involved in things outside of sport so that we can see that puts it into action right now of seeing ourselves in a different role other than being an athlete. And I think during and after sport, like Randy said, maintaining the social aspects, keep in touch with teammates, form new teammates. Maybe it looks like at the YMCA or pickleball or something like that too. Athletes love the competition. So keep that competition going, but have a plan along the way to just keep the conversation going.
Great. And Kara, you're not quite there yet. You still got some more sport to do, but any thoughts on retirement?
I was going to say, I don't know how much credible information I guess I would have because I have not done yet. But kind of going off of what Carly said, I think it's important to start early. And that's why I thought this talk is also important. trying to recognize this before you're done, because when you're done, it might feel too late, So I think it's important to recognize yourself earlier on, so that when you are done, you can kind of ease into like the journey you're taking there. But I think what's important, what I plan on doing is maybe picking up some volleyball leagues, playing some
Yeah.
basketball, like just sticking with sports because it's a competitive side of me. It's how it's always been. I played sports growing up. And maybe just remembering, sometimes when you're in college, they become too competitive. You get anxious and you forget how much fun you used to have. I want to find that again. Like I still love my sport, but forget about how tough it can be sometimes. Just enjoy bumping a volleyball, throwing a softball, shooting a basketball, like bring back my 5-year-old wonder of sports again, So revisit it. That's what I plan to do. I think it should work pretty well.
All right. Well, great. This has been great, you guys. I think a lot of great information for our student athletes, and I really appreciate you all being here today. And thank you for your time.